Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us here on the Infinite Prosperity Podcast. My name is Louisa and I help high achievers, entrepreneurs and coaches lift the lid on life and business so that they can live at their highest value. Each episode we will bring you our favourite founders, CEOs and guest experts to share with you their insights and strategies to expand your wealth consciousness, your spiritual leadership and aligned business strategies. We know that living in alignment with your soul's mission is what fulfills you, and we are here to show you how to achieve this in an energetically aligned way. If you haven't already, be sure to claim your free abundance activation in the Akashic Records. Go to louisahavers.com/gift to unlock your abundance activation today. And if you'd like my support in having aligned success in life and business, then contact me at www.louisahavers.com and let's explore together if it's an aligned match. Get ready to live at your highest value and to expand into your next level of money as you elevate and receive more. You create more for others. Righty ho, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode. I'm so excited. We have got a very deep conversation for you today. So a big welcome to Nisanka Wickramarachchi.
Awesome. Yes, thank you for having me, Louisa. Lovely to be here.
I'm so excited to welcome you to the show, and we're practically neighbours, which is wonderful as well. Do you remember when
we are? Yeah.
Where in the world are you? And I was like,
I know.
You're up the road from me.
I know, just 15 minutes drive.
It's brilliant. So let me share your bio, if that's okay with everybody, so that they understand you know what you're talking about. And then we're going to dive into our conversation today around, the impact of narcissistic abuse on business and being parents and all the things. So let me share your bio. So Nisanka is a trauma-aware life coach, a holistic practitioner, a mother, a poet. Oh, I haven't asked you about that. A writer, and helps parents who parent with a narcissistic partner or ex to preserve their sanity, take their life back and support their children. Powerful work. Her experience of growing up in a highly narcissistic environment and later being in narcissistic relationships led her to reflect on her own life at a point where she was severely depressed and suffering from CPTSD. Since then, she's been healing from her inner child wounds, narcissistic abuse to build a thriving life for her and her daughter. Nisanka has worked in the field of education for almost 20 years. Wow. Before becoming a life coach, advanced EFT and matrix reprinting practitioner, she also holds a diploma in NLP. Nisanka is a DISC facilitator and is qualified to work with narcissism and domestic violence, and has loads of other qualifications, including an MA, a BA, CELTA, EYT, diploma in teaching and a diploma in Montessori teaching. A huge welcome, Nisanka.
Oh, thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
I'm so excited for our conversation today. This is a really, I know that what we're going to be diving into is close to my heart. As when we were having our pre-chat, I shared with you that I used to lead on domestic abuse and sexual abuse and developing services for the area that you're in as well. So I was like, oh my goodness. So I'm so pleased to be able to, circle back and to really, my intention, I hope, is that, to raise awareness with our conversation today, to help people kind of know that they're not alone, and for people to be able to recognize where they, may have been having some similar experiences, and that they can reach out to you and to get the support and guidance that they desire. And of course, and I know this goes without saying, from your perspective as well, but just to kind of front load this, is that if you're ever in any risk, please call your local emergency services. Do not take risks. And if you are in a space where you're in crisis, then please reach out to your local domestic abuse violence providers. You'll be able to find them.
Thank you. I was just going to say that is one of the first things I say when I have a connection chat. Are you in immediate danger? This is not the place. 999.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just wanted to kind of front load that. So thank you. I knew you'd get that, understanding. Let's dive into how you got to be making this huge impact that you are now creating today. I'm sure there've been many pivotal moments along your journey. Do share with us. Tell us more about the pivotal moments. How have you led you to starting your business today?
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity and the energy of everybody who's actually listening to this. So, like you said, there's been many, many, many moments in my life that actually just sort of led me to this moment. Because there was a time in my life where I was quite obliviously, very happily, tolerating all the abuse that was going on. And I was telling myself, I've got a good career and I'm just living like a perfect life. I left Sri Lanka and I came here and I had education in England, da da da, or all the rest of it. I was quite blissfully living in the oblivious. And then I was diagnosed with anxiety. I ignored it, developed to severe depression. I ignored that too. But then there was one moment, I mean, I trigger warning, by the way, and it's just where I was actually hugging my daughter. I was basically apologizing to her because I was going to leave her. It's because I think subconsciously I had enough and I wanted to let it all go and put an end to what I was going through. And it was just that moment when, and also another moment where I was actually driving. I ended up in the hospital and saying, I really need help. And it's just these moments, and I really cannot remember which happened first. It was all very blurry. But it's just these moments like, what am I doing to my child? I brought her into this world. I can't be this selfish. And I can't let her, be without me. She's not done anything to deserve it. I've got to really get my life back. And the relationship between my child and me, it was slipping. It was slipping because I wasn't coping with anything, and I was snappy. I was, I found even to sing a lullaby difficult, even to put her to bed difficult. Everything that my child deserved at the time, I was unable to give. I was so numb, and I was, and I had two choices that moment. I could, give this life to my daughter, create the same childhood I had, so for my daughter, or I could go away and do something about it and take some responsibility. Something in me told me to take the second option, and I did. The first thing was to go and get some antidepressants and really help myself like feel things, and then I could make a decision of what kind of therapy and how to go for it, and I could cope with getting out of bed, and so I had to do the basics to begin with, and then it just gradually, it's been few years coming.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm glad. Life is very peaceful. Life is very peaceful. I've made big, huge decisions, broken so many cycles in my life, and the relationship between my daughter and I, it's wonderful. It's amazing, and I'm so grateful that it led me to this path.
That's huge. There's so many things that you've shared there, in that those moments where I could really feel the stress that you must have been under, where for your nervous system to shut down, to be able in that space of trying to kind of do the daily things when we cannot do the daily things because they just are too much, because we're coping with too much. It is a real sign, isn't it, that we've kind of reached that emergency moment. Right, no turning back. I'm going one of two ways. Which way am I going? That's huge.
Exactly. I mean, you read out the qualifications I had, so I've always had a very sound academic background, and it's natural. But there was this moment where I couldn't even translate an email and understand an email. I had to take a post-it note, decode what was in an email, which had like 10 sentences, and then practice writing an answer. What should take 2 minutes usually took me about an hour and a half to complete. I couldn't get out of the shower without needing a sleep or a rest or something. Everything was overstimulated. Everything was too much at the time. So yeah, long journey.
Long journey, and congratulations for what you've created for you and your daughter and all the healing, because it's absolutely a huge healing journey that, as you said, you've been on yourself personally. And these experiences that we have in our personal life, because we're in relationship with everything, aren't we? So we're in relationship with ourselves, we're in relationship with money, we're in relationship with business, we're in relationship with our parents, our partners, children, all the things, and all those aspects of relationship we can then imprint onto our lovely business. Our business is trying to do its thing. You know, from your perspective, let's really dive into this. How do we show up in our business when we've experienced narcissistic abuse?
Good question. Okay, so I'm going to decode everything you've said. Business, showing, showing up, like visibility, money, planning, organization, and authenticity, and how we show up in our business and our goals and our visions. Okay, so I'll decode into everything. And before that, I kind of need to understand, we need to understand what narcissism actually is and what it does to us. So narcissism is made of two major components. One is grandiosity and the other is shame, right? So
Grandiosity and shame.
shame
Mhm.
and belief, the common myth is that narcissistic people are very confident and very successful, but actually they are chronically insecure about themselves, and they're really protecting themselves. That's why their behavior manifests in the way it does. So it doesn't matter what cost to the loving people in their lives, closer people to them, they will protect and guard themselves and make sure everybody else serves them.
Mm.
That's basically what it is. And they lack. So the more the grandiose the person is, lesser the empathy, ability to feel empathy. Okay. Whereas if it's more shame, that they can connect with some level of empathy and some level of pain. But whereas the grandiose part, you don't experience much empathy from these people. You'll find some malignant narcissists who go on to do some cruel things like, hurting, beating, sexual abuse and all sorts of things. So that's narcissism in a nutshell. So what it's like to live in with a person like that, whether it's a sibling, whether it's a parent, teacher, we get narcissism in all sorts of forms, from legal, medical narcissism to educational narcissism to cultural, religious, all sorts of things.
So glad you touched on that.
I know, as our relationships with people that are close to us. What it does to us is it does not allow us to develop. If you've experienced narcissistic parents or narcissism in your childhood, it's like living in a really, really noisy environment where your voice is never heard, because you're not allowed to grow as an individual human being, because there's the narcissistic parents seeing you as an extended version of themselves. So you have a narcissistic parent who is very much into appearance and whatnot, then they will turn you into something like that. The moment you go against it, then you see punishment and, discardment and devaluation, gaslighting, and, all the rest of it. So when you're experiencing something like that on a daily basis, what happens to you is, first, you lose a sense of identity. You don't experience love and empathy. And so you kind of, these concepts become arbitrary. So in a healthy environment, when you start experiencing love and empathy, your system is all very confused and you end up rejecting them. So
Yeah.
you can't receive things. And narcissistic parents, narcissistic people are very transactional. So if they give you something, they're expecting something, well, more in return, which means your idea of receiving bagged up with this idea of they're expecting more back from you. So there's that distorted version of giving and receiving. And then there's the chronic anxiety, chronic self-doubt, inability to trust somebody, inability to be intimate with somebody, the mind-body disconnection, because you're constantly in this pool of cortisol and fight or flight, the trauma response. So there's a great deal of damage it does to you as a person. So
That's
bringing it.
brilliant. Yeah, thank you so much, because I think that can really help, where if those terms are new to people, then you've just been able to kind of go help people unpack the puzzle. And also often, you know, people can hear these terms, but I think what you've really brought to light, Nisanka, which I just wanted to reflect on, was being able to help people kind of see where, if it is impacting themselves or others, to be able to kind of make those connections, which I think is really, really helpful.
Yeah. So the next stage of me giving the answer is to actually make it relevant to the business that we do, right? What do we need in a business for us to make it successful? We need to be able to trust in ourselves, have the positive beliefs in ourselves, be able to actually connect with a vision and a goal and a mission in our lives, and also be able to take actions to go for it. And what do we need for that is positive beliefs and energy, right? When you've been impacted by narcissistic abuse, you lose both, right? Because you're in chronic survival. So your whole system goes into survival. So everything becomes incredibly hard. I mean, it's likely that a lot of people who've been in narcissistic relationships for a long time are actually facing chronic illnesses as well, in addition to depression and anxiety and all the anxious attachment. Let's decode the relationship that we have to build up. What do we say in business? You've got to make connections. You've got to go out there, collaborate with people. And for somebody who's actually been in a narcissistic relationship, this can be excruciating to do. It isn't a mindset issue. This is trauma and survival. It's not mindset. Reason being, the relationship you have about collaboration is being manipulated, being lied to, being used as an object, as a backup plan, or as a transaction of value. The moment you've been used in these relationships, and you also been discarded. Narcissistic people are so good at doing that. So they love bomb you. So the initial relationship that you need to create with somebody to collaborate, you got to have a genuine connection. But we fear being love bombed, right? We fear that's because that's one of the stages of a narcissistic relationship. And then there's the devaluation, there's the constant ignorance, the manipulating, lying, which we sometimes see in collaborative efforts. We see that, don't we? And then, but we fear even getting into that first step of connecting with somebody and having a conversation with somebody, because we fear being rejected, we fear being discarded, we fear being sort of devalued and used. So there's all these fears that is there because we've experienced it. It's the life that we've lived. So okay. So, and the other thing is we've got to be able to trust ourselves to be able to go out there and do something, And trust comes really, really hard after narcissistic abuse. It takes a long time to first trust ourselves and the second trust somebody else, okay? Because you're so used to walking on eggshells around this abusive person. It's not because you don't have the skills to, right? It's been your experience for a long period of time. Even if it's short period of time, narcissistic abuse is subtle, so strong and so cruel that it just can destroy you within a week of being in a relationship like that, or an experience. So, and then the trust can be really hard. Relationship with our money, and that's the other thing we need to obviously work on in a business. In many intimate narcissistic relationship, but that includes actually parents as well, siblings as well, where everything was transactional, you had no power over money. So your relationship with money is very different, right? You were violated or you were robbed of your own money. A lot of people you will see have gone into debts and because of narcissistic relationships, because you've given trust, you've given money and you've lost that. And when you try to get it back, and narcissistic people can be very vindictive. So they attack you and they actually hold you responsible without them taking responsibility. So the relationship that you have with money is something that you're going to have to build up from the scratch again. It's about believing that you can have money, you can manage your own money, and and you can do whatever the F you want with your money.
And making decisions around money, that you're competent to make decisions around money. You're not stupid. You can make good decisions around money, because certainly from what you've shared and my awareness around narcissism as well, is that piece of how it undermines people's decision making and the very essence of who you be.
Absolutely. And the thing is, like, narcissistic relationships often linked with coercive control as well. So one of the things that in coercive relationships is that you lose your power over your own money, and you have to start begging. And also, you're probably gaslighted about your ability to manage your own money. You've been gaslighted to believe that you can't handle anything, so you're going to have to depend on somebody else to do that.
With gaslighting, just I can't remember if you described that term at the beginning, because I'm very familiar with it, but I was thinking that it might be helpful for people to understand what is gaslighting if they're not aware of it.
Okay, gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation that takes place over a period of time that actually denies you of your own reality. So, gaslight is there's a series of calculated actions that the gaslighters, the abusive people take. That is to establish trust through love bombing and make you feel like really believe in them. And the second is to make you idealize them. So they create this power imbalance that they're more powerful than over you. So they create that. Once they've actually earned your loyalty and your trust, they start devaluing you in the sense that they actually push you down even more. And then the gaslighting process is really denying your own reality. So you may come up with something like, oh, I really want to go and do this thing for myself. And they will tell you that they might sometimes, in situations, they might not even say, oh, don't do it. I don't like it. They're not that direct sometimes. It can be like, oh, have you thought about it? I mean, we are going to do this now, aren't we? We're going to start a family. But, I just thought that we might just put that money aside for the family in the future. Like, if that was me, I would think about the family, and I wouldn't really think about spending it on me. So they will guilt trip you out, and, they'll make you feel really guilty about
It
it.
can be very subtle.
Very subtle, and you will be left confused. And because you already trust this person, you go, oh, they're really thinking about me. Actually, this is really good. But the family never happens. And that's the other part. The family that they use to guilt trip you, that never happens. That's more future faking. So it's like faking a future that they do know they're not going to give. Exactly. Second, there's another side that actually very often we don't see in this narcissistic relationship, that's double standard. They won't let you, but it's happy for them to go away and then do that for themselves. So that they will see the same money they said we didn't have to spend, they'll be happily spending it on something. But if you ever challenge them, this is how complicated gaslighting is, right? But if you ever challenge them, I can't believe you're being so selfish, and I've only done this ever once, and I've just looked after the family. I earn money. I look after you. Remember 5 years ago when you chose to do this course and I let you?
25 years ago, that one time. Hold on to it forever.
That one time that they will. So imagine living in this roller coaster and this literal hell, really, hell on earth. Although none of us have actually been to hell and don't know what it's like, so it could be a better place. I don't know. But imagine living this life. You're constantly kind of confused, and so the end result is you lose trust in yourself, and you lose trust in your own ability, and you lose you start doubting yourself, and it becomes chronic self-doubt to a point. Like, I remember not even being able to decide what I want for breakfast. It became a really hard choice. I don't know, I felt guilty for choosing something, and it's just you don't pay attention to these moments of self-doubt because it feels like a normal thing. But actually, it is a result of living in chronic self-doubt all the time.
And all that
All
programming that you've received from your partner or the parent or whoever
Yeah,
it may be, you know, our
yeah,
consciousness is absorbing what we are surrounded by. So typically, if you're in an abusive relationship, they will reduce your contacts with other people, start to say, you know, your friends, your family are horrible people, or however they're going to position it, so that you become more and more dependent on them. And then, of course, you're only getting that programming, and then your body's having all these responses. So it can happen so quickly, and it's so subtle, like you were saying, over time, drip, 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 drip. Before you know it, you completely changed, you know, lost your sense of self, and all those things that then kind of spiral down and have a huge impact on your well-being.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's so essential that we spend enough time deprogramming
Mm,
ourselves from these programming because most of us, longer the relationship, the narcissistic relationship, stronger the programming is and thicker the programming is, and then longer it takes to actually deprogram. Most of us, we recognize ourselves or we identify ourselves with these personality traits in the sense like, oh, we think, so for a long time, my belief was, oh, I suck at managing money. I suck, right? Because that's what I've been
that's
told.
your programming.
Right? I'd been earning money on my own money since I was 19. I was living a life and, I earning comfortable money, not too much, but comfortable money. But, oh, I suck at why don't you why don't you do it on on yourself, you know? And then the second thing, buying something for myself, I did some compulsive shopping, but then there's the feeling of feeling guilty about it, buying something for myself, blaming myself, and it's like really gaslighting myself for
Yes,
treating
yes.
myself, you know, really gaslighting myself. Oh, Nisanka, what do you think? What do you think? You could spend this money on your child, da, 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 like, yeah, and it I deprogram quite a lot of it. There are moments I catch myself doing this. The trick is to be able to catch yourself and then pause and deprogram
Yeah.
and then continue with what you do. There's the good guilt as well. Sometimes we can put things into perspective and we have to be careful not to get too upset about some of our decisions and some of our guilt because we also feel guilty because we are kind and empathetic, considerate people, and that's not a bad thing. But what I'm particularly mentioning is chronic guilt.
Yeah.
Chronic. It's chronic. It doesn't matter what you do, right? How little you spend, you feel guilty.
So with your clients that you work with, do you see that if they've had it, because I know you work with people after they've had the crisis has been and gone, they're moving out and wanting to kind of create their next chapter in life and to make it a better one. So that's where you come in, working with your clients, and being able to help them with, you know, changing the guilt, changing the self-doubt, building that trust with themselves. You know, are there any kind of things that people say to you or that they experience as they're trying to kind of or intending to show up in business? Because business can be a trigger in that
Yeah.
we are working in a realm where things aren't certain. We're implementing strategies. You know, there'll be things that might be changing around us that we can't necessarily predict. And so, you know, some of the key things I think that really help an entrepreneur to be successful is developing emotional resilience, is developing that strong sense of self so you can lead yourself and navigate the business, what might feel like a business roller coaster at times.
Yeah. So is there anything that I would say to my clients? So um I think one of the things that they struggle is not having clarity around what exactly they want in their life because they have been told this is what they want in their life. And to then process that to then get to a point where they feel clarity around what exactly they want for themselves. And that's the bit that takes a long, long, long time. Mind you, just because the narcissistic abuse is over, you left the relationship, doesn't mean that the people have stopped abusing these people, because there is something called post separation abuse. So that can go on for forever, especially when you're in a co-parenting situation. That's the thing that they use to get back at you. So I think most of my clients that I'm just sort of thinking about, all the people that I'm working with and have worked with, have been in a lot of survival stage where they still need a lot of looking after, they still need a lot of self-care, and they still need to feel okay to be able to look after themselves. They're still, let alone thinking about like a future, they have to give themselves permission first, and they have to hear it from somebody else, and it's okay that you look after yourself, because they've been so gaslighted out of even doing the basic care for themselves. So that's usually where I meet a lot of my clients. And then they go through the process and they get to a stage where they're like, oh, I feel ready. And most of my clients have actually looked for jobs. So I've only worked with one or two people who've said, oh, I might actually want to go into business. So I can't particularly say this is what they're looking for, but they're looking for stability. They're looking for peace. They're looking for something that give them some time and peace and sort of time with their children. Um, it kind of goes in stages. So at they so there's the shock of
Yes.
I've been narcissistic, this is narcissistic abuse. And there's the denial. I can't, no, this is not that person's, we had really good days. No, this is not narcissistic abuse. And there's the rock bottom, because you come to not, you go through knowledge and you understand, oh, this is narcissistic abuse, and then you hit the rock bottom, right? And then people go through acceptance. Working with clients from a place of acceptance is easier, a lot easier than people who are in the denial, shock, that kind of stage. And it's about then working with them to, like, with one goal at a time, with one goal, confidence, pushing them out of the comfort zone a little bit, doing things that they love, figuring out what their purpose in their life. And there's a lot of figuring out to do and
It is,
deep.
isn't there? Yeah. And actually, as you're talking about this, you're reminding me of one of the things that this is taking me back past 7 years ago. And one of the policies that we got in place and we were working with providers to get in place was to keep people who were being affected by domestic abuse safe in the workplace, so that, if they had, for example, had to be relocated, that the person that had been abusing them couldn't find them and all those things. And it, as we're talking, it's reminding me, one of the things that we used to see, and we would see, because I used to work for social services, and we had lots of great policies in there to help people if they were living with domestic abuse, is the amount of stress that you referred to at the beginning. Now, of course, if you've got a team member, so we've got entrepreneurs are listening to the podcast, some may have like one team member, some may be thinking about having a team members, and others will have, a large team. And of course, if performance, for want of a better phrase, suddenly dips within somebody's way of showing up in business or in
Yeah.
your business, is being able to have a process in place to support people, because you don't need to be adding to their stress when, they might have been really, really good at what they were doing, their job, etc. But because something's kind of kicked off at home, and they've been managing this and hiding this abusive relationship, because people do tend to not talk about this. This is why it's like, we've got to talk about these things, blow it out in the open, because it loses its kind of power and edge from that perspective. Is helping people to, if they are employers of members of their team who might be subcontracted or indeed be employed by them, how we as business owners can support people who may be showing up or finding it difficult with decision making because of their previous experience. Does that make sense?
So is it like how to put some sort of a plan in place to support people who might be going through this thing? Yeah, it's a good question. It's a really, really important question. I would say have a culture where people feel comfortable and coming and talking to you about it, have a compassionate culture. So rather than, like you mentioned about performance, and it really took me back to when I was working, I was at the height of this. And the thing that my company noticed was my dip in the performance. And they went straight into addressing the performance and putting consequences in place. And nobody thought of asking, are you okay? What's going on at home? So the first
Yeah.
question is, what's going on? What's going on with you? Is there anything we can do to help you? Unless you have that cultural approach and the rapport and the trust, nobody's going to come forward and say, I've been domestically abused, because the first thing that the abusers actually do to people is to intimidate them. That's why leaving is really hard, because you fear for your life. You fear exposing the abuser, right? So exposing has consequences. So have confidential service, have information about this available, and actually have speakers in place. Bring speakers from outside who understand domestic abuse, but understand the plethora of type,
Mm,
domestic abuse, not just the physical, sexual, the obvious one, but this coercive control, which is not very commonly talked about. Narcissistic abuse, still not commonly talked about. Bring in people and actually raise awareness. When somebody like me, say, for example, I talk, if I'd heard somebody like me talk 5 years ago at work, I'd go, yeah, that's what's happening to me.
yeah.
you know and then I would think, I'd make decisions in my own time.
Mm,
I knew that the culture is positive, and it's compassionate, and it's open to having these things. And one of the things that I'd always worried with my mental health diagnosis, as well as this whole understanding of what actually was going on, was if I said to them, I've always been a high performer, that I would lose my job, I'd lose my position, I would have to let go of this place, and the shame around it.
mm,
Confident, educated woman, how can I be going through that?
yeah.
Shame around it. So we've got to really create cultures and have supporting system in plan. Work with a couple of people. Maybe like you can get in elsewhere to support, and make information readily available, and have somebody who's actually got some level of understanding, and particularly somebody who actually have the emotional empathy, not just the cognitive empathy where you can go, oh, is that what's going, oh, I'm so sorry.
Mm.
That's support.
Well,
Not
people need to understand, I think, don't they, that the complexities around it, because sometimes, when you're telling somebody without them really being able to feel it, it can sound slightly like, is that it? If
is
that
that it?
makes sense. Particularly with gaslighting, and things like that, because it can be so subtle, and it is the energy and the intent and the what was said before and the body language. There's so many layers to it that I remember talking with many people that would be really afraid to share what had happened, because it just sounded, or they thought it would sound like, what are you complaining about, type thing.
Yes.
Makes sense. And
It,
that's like ongoing gaslighting, because it's like you're kind of ending up gaslighting yourself, because like, I can't tell anybody because it sounds so ridiculous. But actually, if somebody really has been educated, then they're going to be like, no, I completely get it. We've
yes.
got you. It's okay. We're here to help. You've got a
Yeah,
safe place at work, whether you're working online or wherever it may be, and to be able to support that person whilst they're kind of navigating the
absolutely.
things that
Can
are
I
going on.
can I add one thing to that one, please? As something came to my mind. There is this big toxic saying, you gotta leave home life behind the door when you come into work.
Mm.
You bring your nervous system, love. It's part of the deal.
I'll just leave my nervous system behind. That's such a good point. That's really a good point. Your nervous system is with you
It's
wherever
like,
you
oh,
go.
no. I know. I have a cupboard available. I'll leave my nervous system outside the door.
Your nervous system is with you. It's going home with you. It's in your business with you. It's everywhere.
It's
Yeah,
everywhere.
excellent.
So bring yourself and accept that's what you're bringing. I think that's the key. the company, as well as you as an entrepreneur, what you need to acknowledge is you bring yourself, you bring your nervous system, you bring your belief system into everything that we do and acknowledge it, because without that acceptance and without that acknowledgement, it's very difficult to create magic. From a place of denial, it's very difficult to create magic, magic, whatever the magic that you want to create, whether it's the 7-figure business or whether it's the, I don't know, it's charity, whether it's just working with 2 clients but doing a damn good job. I don't know what it is for you. But to create magic, you've got to be able to accept your human experience as, yeah, that's happened. I bring my nervous system with me. I know how to regulate myself. And that's the other thing. And I think a lot of companies, entrepreneurs got to be part of the business skills, got to be also how to regulate our nervous system.
Yes.
It's so important. It's so, so, so important. It's like, breathing oxygen. Without that, you're not really breathing and you're not alive. And without us knowing how to regulate ourselves, and however you want to do it, whether it's yoga or meditating, going for a walk and playing squash, I don't know. EFT tapping, and that's what I do. But you've got to be able to notice what's happening, the triggers, and then regulate your nervous system, because creativity comes from a place of regulated nervous system, and magic comes from your good conversations with employees and service providers and your clients, all come from a regulated nervous system, nervous system. And if your energy is all over the place, you're gonna pass that on to your clients when you work with them, or service providers, or employees that you work with, or colleagues, yeah.
Thank you so much. There's so much wisdom here that you've shared. Just to wrap up, and you might well have touched on this already, but just to kind of wrap it up for people, what would you say the 3 tips that you would share with entrepreneurs who are listening in relation to our conversation today?
Okay. One thing is, with 1 in 5 people displaying narcissistic personality traits, you are likely to bump into some of them at work, as clients, service providers, anywhere. So have an understanding of how these behaviors might show up in your business, and if you're a survivor, how that might show up in your business. So pay attention to it. That's one thing. Second, I think I've already talked about the importance of understanding the nervous system regulation, because without that, anything that you do in terms of cognitive things that you're trying to do, trying to be creative, trying to create new ideas, you're only going so far with it. So we work way better from a more peaceful place when our nervous system is regulated. Third is, you cannot change narcissistic people. Therefore, whatever the work that you do, make sure it's about you and you deprogramming, but it's not about changing the other person. So if you're a healer working with a narcissistic client, understand that you cannot change. But in that case, how can you make sure that your experience is positive for both of you? I'm not asking anybody to discard narcissistic people. I'm asking you to be aware and know how to work with them. I think that's the 3 things.
Wisdom bombs right there. Yeah, thank you so much. And that's really interesting about the 1 in 5 people displaying narcissistic traits, because I think it's certainly a conversation that you hear a lot of people on, YouTube and TikTok, and everyone kind of talking about it, but often with not the kind of expertise and experience that you've shared. And for people to really be able to understand it, and that there's a continuum of narcissism. So you can have people on a kind of, it's like with anything, it really isn't it, but really
Like,
being mindful of that. Very few people actually go off and get the diagnosis that they've got narcissistic personality trait disorder, because of course they don't think there's anything wrong, so they're unlikely to kind of go off and seek that sort of diagnosis. It's one of those complex.
just to make a subtle distinction there. So there's 2 things that I talk about. One is NPD, that's the narcissistic personality disorder, which is a debilitating condition that you need to be diagnosed with. But there's the narcissism. So in terms of people showing consistent characteristic traits of the narcissism, that's two different things. So people who show narcissistic traits don't always get diagnosed with the NPD.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for clarifying that. I think it's really helpful for people to kind of recognize that there's that continuum and those two pieces with it on the spectrum of the continuum. Because, and the reason why I wanted to highlight that as well was because that piece, how we can, and particularly if somebody has experienced any abuse, you start to, Nisanka, as you were saying, gaslight yourself. Oh no, it was not really that bad, etc., etc. And so we might identify some narcissistic traits, and then of course you see someone else who's got more traits, and then you think, oh no, it's not really that, but actually it's just that continuum of traits being reflected back. Oh, there's so much here, and I know you've got an amazing free gift. So how can people stay in touch, come into your world, tell everybody where they can find you, and tell us about your free gift?
Okay, so you can find me on my website, www.coachingwithnisanka.com, and Nisanka is spelled as Nisanka. So that's coachingwithnisanka.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, so it's Nisanka Wickramarachchi. I'm on Instagram under Co-Parenting with the Narcissist Coach. I also have a Facebook group. It's a private group, so some of you might feel comfortable being there. It's called Co-Parenting with a Narcissist Support Group. I run a community event every second Wednesday of every month. That is for the people who've been through narcissistic abuse. It's a community event. You come in, we share. It's community healing because it's essential for narcissistic abuse and healing. There's no selling, so I won't use the space to sell anything, and it's just for us to focus on ourselves. That's that. And then I'm running a workshop on the 18th of October. It's an introduction workshop to parenting with a narcissist or narcissistic partner. So it's on the 18th of October. I'll give you the link.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. And do you run those regularly? Just thinking about when we release this, if people have missed that date for whatever reason.
Yes. So I think I will announce the date for November. I'll be running the same workshop again in November, probably in December as well.
So to get on your list, so they get notified about all the good things you got coming up.
Oh yes, if you go actually sign up for my newsletter, occasionally when I have a really good moment, I offer gift sessions. It's one of those birthdays, my daughter's birthday, whatever it is. Like I occasionally send out surprising gift sessions as well. So yeah, watch out. If you're on the email list, then you'll get them.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much, Nisanka, for your time, for sharing all your expertise, and really starting to bring this conversation to life for people who are listening to our podcast. So grateful for you and all the work that you're doing.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for listening, everybody. Take care.
Thanks so much, Nisanka, and thank you everybody for joining us. Until next time, sending you all lots and lots of love. Thanks for listening to the Infinite Prosperity Podcast, and if you like what you've heard and want to know more, please go to louisahavers.com. We just appreciate you so much, so thank you for listening and hanging out with us. If there's anything that we can do for you, you can email us at louisa@louisahavers.com. Let my team know if you have any ideas for shows that you'd love to hear or topics you want me to talk about. Really looking forward to hearing from you. All right, that is it for this week, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today. Looking forward to connecting with you again. Until next time, namaste.